I'm Serafina Vaughn, though folks just call me Sera, a gal of 32 summers who found herself stranded in a fancy Tennessee eatery with a $15,000 bill pinned to her name like a scarlet letter. My kin, my own flesh and blood, thought it a grand jest to leave me there, their laughter echoing like a cruel ballad in the night. But mark my words, within 3 days their high and mighty world crumbled, and they came crawling back, hats in hand, begging for mercy that wasn't mine to give. If you're watching this tale unfold, hit that subscribe button to catch more stories of folks rising from the ashes, and let me know where you're tuning in from in the comments below. It all began in Willow Creek, Tennessee, a speck of a town where my father, Roland Baxter, loomed large as a titan of industry. He was the head of Baxter Tech, a company that folks whispered about with reverence, its glass offices gleaming under the southern sun. To the world, Roland was a man of iron will, a leader who could charm a snake from its skin. But behind the oak doors of our family home, he was a different breed, a king whose throne was built on the broken dreams of those closest to him. And I, his youngest daughter, was his greatest disappointment. I'd carved out a life in Chicago, where I wrangled code as a software engineer, building systems that kept the world's commerce humming. It was good work, honest work, the kind that filled my bank account and my heart with a quiet pride. But to Roland, it was not but tinkering with gadgets, a childish pastime unfit for the Baxter name. My sister, Meredith, was the golden child, her every step a dance of grace, her marriage to a slick-talking lawyer the crown jewel of my father's ambitions. Me? I was the shadow, the one who paid the piper when my mother's shopping sprees outran her purse, or when the bank came knocking for the mortgage. For years, I'd been their silent savior, pouring my earnings into their coffers, driven by a fool's hope that one day I'd earn a nod of respect, a flicker of love. I'd wired thousands to cover their debts, each transfer a prayer that they'd see me as more than a purse to plunder. It was a lonesome bargain when I struck with myself in the quiet of my Chicago apartment, believing that love could be bought with dollars. But Roland's 60th birthday, I reckoned, would be the turning point. I'd saved for months, scraping together $6,000 for a vintage watch, its gold face a mirror of my longing. I booked a private room at the Hearthstone, a restaurant so grand it felt like stepping into a governor's mansion. And I vowed to pay for every plate, every glass, every moment of that night. That evening, as I clutched the watch's velvet box in my coat pocket, I felt the weight of 1,000 unspoken dreams. I imagined Roland's eyes softening, his hand on my shoulder, a father's pride at last. But as I stepped into that dining room, the air thick with the scent of roasted lamb and betrayal, I sensed a storm brewing. The Hearthstone chandeliers cast a mocking glow, and my family's smiles were sharp as knives. They thought they'd play me for a fool, but they didn't know the fire they'd kindled. They thought they'd broken me, but I was about to break their empire. The road to that fateful night at the Hearthstone was paved with a decade of my own folly, a trail of dollars and dreams I'd scattered like seed on barren ground. In Willow Creek, my father, Roland Baxter, held court as a man of means, his tech empire a beacon to all who craved power. But beneath the polished veneer, his kingdom was a house of cards, propped up by my sweat and savings. I'd left that town for Chicago, chasing a life of my own, building software that kept the world's wheels turning. Yet no matter how far I roamed, the shadow of my father's disapproval clung to me like damp river mud. My work, though it paid handsomely, was a jest to Roland. He called it fiddling with wires, a child's game unworthy of his legacy. My sister, Meredith, was his pride, her every curtsy a triumph, her husband's law office a glittering prize. I was the lesser, the one whose name never graced the family's boasts. But when their lavish life outstripped their means, it was my door they darkened. A call would come, Roland's voice smooth as molasses, spinning tales of temporary troubles at Baxter Tech. A payroll to meet, a deal just shy of closing, always a promise of repayment that never came. I'd send the money, $10,000 here, $25,000 there, each sum a silent plea for a father's love. It wasn't just the company I propped up. My mother, Diane, had a taste for finery, her closet stuffed with dresses that cost more than a working man's wage. When her credit card bills piled high, I'd clear them, my heart sinking with every transaction. The mortgage on their grand house, the dues at the Willow Creek Country Club, I paid those too, a secret benefactor to a life I'd never live. But the bitterest pill came when I stumbled upon a truth that cut deeper than their scorn. Rifling through bank statements one sleepless night, I found payments to an apartment in Nashville, a place my mother never mentioned. It was Roland's secret, a nest for a mistress he thought I'd never uncover, funded by my own labor. That discovery was a cold blade to the gut, yet it didn't stop me from hoping. When Roland called, his voice alight with rare warmth, I clung to his words like a drowning soul to a spar. He spoke of his 60th birthday, of a new chapter for Baxter Tech, and hinted at a place for me in its future. A role, he said, where my name would shine beside his. It was the siren song I'd waited my life to hear, and I let it drown out the warnings in my heart. I poured my savings into that watch, its gold ticking like a heartbeat, and booked the Hearthstone, believing this time would be different.
I was a fool, but not for long. The truth was waiting, sharp and unyielding in the candlelit shadows of that dining room. The notion of my father's 60th birthday took root in my mind like a stubborn weed, promising a harvest of respect I'd long been denied. I set about planning a grand affair, believing that a single night might mend the frayed threads of our bond. In Chicago, I toiled late into the night, squirreling away every spare dollar for a gift that would speak louder than my words ever could. I settled on a vintage watch, its gold face etched with the quiet dignity of time itself, costing me $6,000, a sum that left my savings lean, but my heart full. It was more than a trinket. It was a monument to my hope, a plea carved in metal for Roland Baxter to see his daughter at last. The Hearthstone, Willow Creek's finest eatery, was my chosen stage. Its walls gleamed with polished oak, its chandeliers casting a golden haze over tables draped in linen whiter than a winter's snow. I booked their grandest private room, a space so lofty it seemed to hush the very air. The cost was no small matter, but I vowed to cover every cent, from the first sip of wine to the last crumb of dessert. It was my offering, a sacrifice to the altar of family, laid down with the faith that this time my father's promise of a role at Baxter Tech would hold true. He'd spoken of it with a fervor I hadn't heard in years, his voice crackling over the phone, painting visions of my name etched on the company's door. Yet, as the day drew near,
A shadow crept over my resolve. The memory of that Nashville apartment, its rent drawn from my own purse, gnawed at me. I pushed it aside, clinging to the weight of the watch in my pocket, its steady tick, a reminder of what might be. I saw myself at that dinner, rising to present my gift, my father's eyes softening as he clasped it to his wrist. I imagined his hand on mine, a gesture of pride, a bridge across the chasm of years. But there was another vision, fainter, yet persistent, of laughter sharp as broken glass, of eyes that mocked rather than welcomed. I shook it off, unwilling to let doubt spoil the dream I'd nurtured. The night before, I polished the watch's case until it shone, my reflection distorted in its curves. I packed it carefully, nestling it in velvet, and boarded a plane to Willow Creek, my heart a tangle of hope and dread. The hearthstone loomed ahead, its lights a beacon in the Tennessee dusk. I stepped toward it, the watch a steady weight against my side, believing I was walking toward salvation. Little did I know, I was striding into a trap, its jaws set not with steel, but with the cruel mirth of those I called kin. The hearthstone's private dining room was a cathedral of opulence, its dark wood walls aglow with the flicker of candles, its air heavy with the scent of seared beef and old money. I took my seat at the long table, the watch's velvet box a silent companion in my pocket, my heart pounding like a blacksmith's hammer. My family filed in, their smiles polished as the silverware, but their eyes held a glint of something sharper. Roland, my father, sat at the head, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. My mother, Diane, quayed her part, her laughter a brittle chime, while Meredith and her husband, Lawrence, a lawyer with a serpent's charm, traded glances that set my nerves on edge. The meal unfolded in a parade of courses, each dish a testament to my folly, for I'd sworn to pay the reckoning. Yet the conversation was a gauntlet of slights. Meredith spoke of her latest charity gala, her voice dripping with pride, while Lawrence mused about a state tech grant, his words a veiled jab at my little coding projects. I bore it, my fingers tracing the watch's outline, waiting for the moment to present my gift. When dessert arrived, I seized my chance, my voice trembling as I slid the box across the table. The watch gleamed in its velvet bed, its gold face a silent plea for my father's regard. Roland lifted it, his grunt of, "Fine piece, Sera," as cold as a winter stream. He strapped it on, gave it a cursory glance, and turned to order cognac, dismissing my heart's offering with a flick of his wrist. The true cruelty came swift as a viper's strike. Roland clapped his hands, his voice booming with a glee that chilled me. He proposed a jest, a grand prank to mark his 60th year. They'd slip out, he said, leaving me to face the $15,000 bill alone, then leap from the shadows to mock my dismay. My mother giggled, Meredith smirked, and Lawrence's chuckle was a low, predatory sound. I stammered a protest, but Roland's hand on my back, heavy as a judge's gavel, silenced me. They vanished into the night, their laughter trailing like a curse. Worse still, I later learned they'd posted a video of their flight, tagging me in a public reel that spread across Willow Creek's social pages, branding my humiliation for all to see. I sat amid the wreckage of that feast, the table strewn with half-eaten delicacies, the bill a paper guillotine in my hands. The silence was a weight, crushing the last embers of my hope. I paid what my card could bear, my hands steady despite the storm within, and stepped into the night, the hearthstone's lights mocking my retreat. They thought they'd broken me, but they'd only sharpened the blade of my resolve. The hearthstone's grand hall faded behind me as I stumbled into the Tennessee night, the $15,000 bill a burning coal in my pocket, its weight matched only by the shame of my family's betrayal. I lingered on the curb, the chill air biting at my bones, half expecting their laughter to erupt from the shadows. But the street was empty, save for the hum of distant cars and the pitying glances of passers-by. It was then I sought out Clara, the restaurant's manager, a woman whose kind eyes held a sorrow that mirrored my own. She met me at the desk, her voice soft as a lullaby, and delivered a truth that turned my blood to ice. Roland, she said, had planned this night not as a celebration, but as a test, a cruel prelude to a demand for $300,000, what he called a vital stake in Baxter Tech's future. I demanded proof, my voice steady despite the tempest in my chest. Clara led me to a dim back office where grainy security footage flickered on a screen. There was my father, a week prior, leaning over the reservation desk, his charm a practiced mask as he tapped the floor plan and gestured to my seat, his laughter a conspirator's cackle. It was no jest, but a calculated strike, a con to bend me to his will. I thanked Clara, my words a choked whisper, and returned to the dining room, collapsing into a chair. My phone buzzed, a venomous glow in the dark. A family chat bore a video posted for all Willow Creek to see, showing them piled into their gleaming SUV, guffawing as Meredith's caption crowed, "Hope Sarah's got a mop for those dishes. Hashtag Roland 60th. The final blow came in a private text from Roland, its words a lash across my soul. "Good test, girl. You passed. $300,000 by noon tomorrow. Papers are ready." The audacity of it stole my breath, but it was the discovery that followed that set my heart ablaze. Digging through old emails, I found a trail of transfers I'd made to Baxter Tech, some labeled for a community fund. A quick search revealed it was no charity, but a sham, a front to siphon funds for Roland's mistress and his cronies, built on my dime. The sum was staggering, a betrayal deeper than the night's cruel jest. I stood, the dining room silence no longer a weight, but a clarion call. They'd played me for a fool, but I was done being their pawn. The fire of my resolve burned bright, and I knew the reckoning was mine to shape. The hearthstone's betrayal was the spark that set my soul ablaze, and in its aftermath I moved with the cold precision of a general plotting war. Back in my hotel room, the sterile walls a stark contrast to the chaos within, I sat on the bed's edge, my hands steady as I waged a silent rebellion. My phone, still glowing with Roland's vile demand for $300,000, was my first battlefield. I called my bank's fraud line, my voice calm as a frozen river, and ordered a fortress built around my accounts. Every checking, savings, and investment was locked tight, new passwords forged, and alerts set to a fresh email none but I could touch. The operator, sensing the steel in my words, paused when I asked of recent intrusions. A single attempt, she said, from Willow Creek's network. Time to the hour my family mocked me in their car. Roland had tried to plunder my savings while their laughter still rang. With my fortune secured, I turned to the scaffolding of their lives, the payments I'd foolishly upheld. My laptop glowed in the dim room as I logged into my bank's portal, each click a hammer blow to their empire. The mortgage on their Willow Creek mansion, $4,000 monthly, was the first to fall. I pictured its gaudy columns, its oak-lined halls, and canceled the payment with a single stroke. Next, my mother's credit card, bloated with $3,500 in boutique purchases, met the same fate. The Nashville apartment, that secret den of Roland's shame, its $2,000 rent drawn from my purse, was severed with a grim satisfaction. The Willow Creek Country Club's dues, a paltry $1,200, vanished last, a final snip to their social crown. But my mind, trained to untangle the knots of code, demanded more than vengeance. It craved truth. I opened a blank spreadsheet, its empty cells a canvas for my reckoning. Hour after hour, I sifted through a decade of bank statements, each transfer a wound reopened, a $1,500 car repair for Diane, a $5,000 loan for Baxter Tech's Phantom Deals, a $20,000 infusion for a charity that never was. Line by line, the numbers grew. By dawn, my eyes burned, my hands trembled, but the total flashed like a beacon, $512,387.19. It was a sum so vast it seemed a fiction, yet each digit was a brick in the prison I'd built for myself. The charity scam, its funds diverted to Roland's mistress and his cronies, was the deepest cut, a betrayal that dwarfed the restaurant's jest. Grief followed, a tidal wave that nearly drowned my resolve. I pulled a worn photo from my bag, a snapshot of me at 6, perched on Roland's shoulders at a county fair, our smiles untainted by the years. The memory tore a sob from my throat, the pain of a child who'd lost her hero. But I would not break. I saved the spreadsheet, its truth my shield, and prepared to face the dawn, no longer their daughter, but a woman unbound. The dawn that followed my night of reckoning brought a stillness, a calm before the storm I knew would break. My spreadsheet, that grim ledger of $512,387.19, was my sword, but I needed a warrior to wield it. In Chicago, I sought out Cassandra Holt, a lawyer whose name struck fear in the hearts of corporate titans. Her office, perched high above the city's river, was a fortress of glass and steel, her gray eyes sharp as a hawk's. I laid bare my tale, the Hearthstone's betrayal, the viral video, the charity scam, and Roland's brazen demand for $300,000. Cassandra listened, her silence a judge's deliberation, and when I showed her the spreadsheet, her lips curved in a rare, predatory smile. This, she declared, was no mere family feud, but a case of calculated plunder, and she would see it answered. The first ripples of my rebellion reached Willow Creek swift as a telegraph. My phone, once silent, erupted with the desperate cries of my kin. Meredith's texts were a venomous flood, accusing me of shattering their world, her words dripping with a sister's scorn. "The mortgage bounced, Sera," she wrote.
Mothers weeping. The clubs barred our name. How dare you? My mother's voicemails were a theater of tears, pleading for me to mend what I'd broken, as if I'd been the one to wield the axe. Roland's messages were roars of rage, his voice a thunderclap demanding I bow to his will. I forwarded each to Cassandra, my heart a stone, letting their panic build my case. A new wind blew from Baxter Tech, a whisper of treachery that strengthened my hand. A whistleblower, a quiet accountant named Thomas, reached out to Cassandra, his conscience stirred by the charity scam I'd uncovered. He sent ledgers, hidden in the company's vaults, showing how Roland had funneled my funds to a sham foundation, its proceeds lining his mistress's purse and his own. It was a revelation that turned my personal grievance into a public crusade. For Thomas vowed to testify, his evidence a noose around Roland's neck. Cassandra wove this into our case, alongside Clara's affidavit from the hearthstone and my spreadsheet's unyielding truth. A letter arrived from Roland's lawyer, a pompous fool named Grayson, whose blustering threats were as hollow as a rotted log. He accused me of abandoning my duty, demanding I restore their funds or face ruin. Cassandra laughed, her voice a blade, and declared it a gift to our cause. Their desperation was a confession, their threats a map to their defeat. I felt the tide turning, my resolve forged anew, ready to face the battle that loomed in the shadow of their crumbling empire. The hour of confrontation came like a storm breaking over the Tennessee hills, and I strode into it with Cassandra Holt at my side, her presence a shield against the venom of my kin. We met in a sterile conference room in Nashville, its mahogany table gleaming under harsh lights, a battlefield chosen for its neutrality. Roland sat across from us, his once mighty frame shrunken, his suit hanging loose as if his very soul had withered. His lawyer, Grayson, fidgeted beside him, his papers a flimsy armor against Cassandra's razor wit. Roland's eyes, once commanding, now burned with hatred, tinged with fear, a man unmasked before his reckoning. Cassandra opened the fray, her voice smooth as a river stone, laying out my case with surgical precision. She spoke of my years of unasked support, of funds drained to prop up a failing empire, and of the hearthstone's cruel jest. Then she unveiled my spreadsheet, its $512,387.19, a towering indictment projected on the wall. Line by line it scrolled, mortgage payments, credit card bills, the Nashville apartment's shameful rent, and the charity scam's ill-gotten gains. The room fell silent, the numbers a thunderclap that drowned Roland's bluster. Grayson's jaw slackened, his confidence crumbling like dry clay. But the true blow came when Cassandra revealed the whistleblower's ledgers, Thomas's gift from Baxter Tech's shadows. They showed Roland's hand in the charity fraud, my money funneled to his mistress and his cronies under the guise of philanthropy.
She added Clara's affidavit, detailing the hearthstone's premeditated betrayal and a new wound, bank records tying my funds to the mistress's lavish life, a secret Roland thought buried. His face paled, his knuckles white as he gripped the table, the Titan reduced to a cornered beast. For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not of the law, but of me, the daughter he'd dismissed as weak. I met his gaze, my own eyes steady, my heart a fortress unbreached. The numbers, I knew, were my truth, a ledger of betrayal no lie could erase. Roland's voice broke the silence, a hoarse whisper of disbelief. "You kept track? All these years you tallied it?" I said nothing, letting the silence speak, my silence heavier than any shout. The meeting ended without accord, for Roland could not bend without admitting his guilt. As we packed to leave, Grayson scrambled to Cassandra, his whispers desperate, but I saw only my father, his hatred now laced with dread. The balance had shifted, and I stood tall, no longer his shadow, but his judge. The Nashville meeting was but a skirmish in a longer war, and my kin, finding their legal bluster broken, turned to darker arts. A quiet siege began, its weapons whispers and lies, aimed not at my purse, but at the life I'd built. In Chicago, my company, a beacon of my own making, became their target. Anonymous emails slithered into my clients' inboxes, tales of financial ruin and data breaches, each word a poison dart. A review appeared on a tech forum painting me as a tyrant CEO, its lies crafted with a politician's cunning. Lawrence's hand, I knew, for my sister's husband thrived in the shadows of slander. They sought to make me a pariah, to choke the roots of my success until I bent to their will. I countered not with rage, but with clarity, my engineer's mind finding order in chaos. I called my clients, my voice steady as I laid bare the truth, a malicious campaign, personal and false, aimed to tarnish what we'd built. My team, loyal as kin ought to be, rallied round, their trust a bulwark against the lies. We hired a firm to trace the smears, each rebuttal strengthening our name. The battle was grueling, its cost in time and coin heavy, but it forged my resolve anew. My clients, seeing my honesty, doubled their faith, and our contracts grew, a testament to the strength of truth over treachery. While I fought this public war, Cassandra Holt pressed the legal front, her strategy of vice tightening on Roland's empire. She demanded Baxter-Tech's financial records, a decade's worth of secrets to lay bare their fraud. But the final stroke came from my mother, Diane, in a desperate bid to sway me. A voicemail arrived, her voice a tapestry of tears and guile, admitting what I'd long suspected. She spoke of Roland's mistress, of the charity scam she'd known and abetted, pleading that their sacrifices justified my support. It was a confession, unwitting and damning, a gift to our cause.
I sent it to Cassandra, who called it the keystone of our case, proof of their transactional heart. The siege faltered, their lies crumbling under the weight of their own deceit. Diane's words, paired with Thomas's ledgers and my spreadsheet, formed an unbreakable chain. I stood taller, my company unbowed, my spirit unyielding. They'd sought to break me, but each blow only sharpened my edge. The end was near, and I was ready to claim the peace I'd fought for, a peace born not of their surrender, but of my own unshakable truth. The war with my kin ended not with a clash of steel, but with a silence as profound as a winter's dawn. My lawyer, Cassandra Holt, had crafted a settlement, a parchment of finality that demanded their eternal distance in exchange for sparing them a public flaying. They signed it, my father Roland, my mother Diane, my sister Meredith, and her scheming husband Lawrence, their names scrawled in trembling ink, a surrender to avoid the ruin my evidence promised. The spreadsheet, Thomas's ledgers, and Diane's damning voicemail stood as sentinels, ensuring their retreat into the shadows of Willow Creek. For 6 months, no word came, no venomous texts or whispered slanders, only a quiet that felt like the first breath after a long drowning. I returned to Chicago, my city of steel and dreams, and found my life blossoming in the absence of their weight. My company, once besieged by their lies, grew by a third, its reputation forged anew in the crucible of truth. I poured my heart into mentoring young women at a tech incubator, guiding souls like young Eliza, whose app for rural healthcare shone with a promise I'd never known in my father's empire. Eliza's triumph, her eyes alight with gratitude as her project found funding, was a joy purer than any boardroom seat Roland had dangled. It was in these moments, amidst the hum of ambition and hope, that I found a purpose my kin could never steal. The collapse of the Baxter name came in fragments, like leaves falling from a dying tree. A newspaper clipping spoke of Baxter-Tech's bankruptcy, its charity scam exposed, Roland's legacy buried beneath a mountain of debt. Their grand mansion, once a monument to pride, appeared on a realtor site, its rooms stripped bare, sold in a desperate bid to appease creditors. Diane's voicemails, once pleading, ceased, and I learned from a distant cousin that she and Roland now dwelled in a rented condo, its peeling walls a mockery of their former glory. Meredith's email, a final barb, arrived one evening, its words a venomous lament for the life I'd stolen. She spoke of her shame, of Lawrence's donors fleeing, of her duty to tend our parents' broken spirits, as if I'd lit the match that burned their world. Yet her rage was a mirror, reflecting not my guilt, but her own imprisonment in their gilded cage. I felt a flicker of pity, for she was trapped in a role I'd escaped, a daughter defined by their approval, now lost without it. I did not reply, dragging her message to the void of my block list, a quiet severance of the last thread. The peace that followed was no fleeting calm, but a deep, abiding stillness, a landscape I'd cultivated within. One spring afternoon, strolling by Chicago's lakefront, I saw a father and daughter flying a kite, its green tail dancing against the sky. Their laughter, free and unburdened, stirred a bittersweet ache, a ghost of the child I'd been, perched on Roland's shoulders. The grief was no longer a wound, but a scar, a faint line in my story, proof of battles won. I returned home, opened my laptop, and gazed at the spreadsheet, its $512,387.19, a relic of a buried past. It had been my sword, my shield, but its work was done, and I was weary of carrying its weight. With a breath, I dragged it to the trash, the soft whoosh of its deletion, a hymn of release. My debt was never to them, but to myself, a debt of dignity paid in full. I stepped to my window, Chicago's lights a constellation of my own making, and knew I was free. If this tale stirred your heart, give it a like, share it with a friend, and subscribe for more stories of triumph over travail. Let me know in the comments how it moved you, for your voices keep this fire burning.